Hello friends. Sorry I had to interrupt my previous talk on institution of marriage. The civilization, ancient civilization in the Neolithic age, 3200 BC. वो सुन लिया, कल करेगा? ठीक है।
वक्त ले जा रहा
अच्छा, जल्दी आना। When the nomadic tribes from the Yamnaya culture in the Pontic steppes, Caspian Caspian mountains, north of Caspian mountains in the Pontic steppes, they started migrating. They domesticated the wild horses and started migrating to Europe. Germanic tribes, Celtic, and Slavic. So these tribes, Indo-European. Before I come to that, I will go to Proto-Indo-European. In the latest research, the origin of Proto-Indo-European was traced back to Altai Mountains, where the Kazakhstan and Mongolia meet. Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Altai Mountains, and there is a lake, Balkal Lake. Balkal, no, the correct pronunciation is Baikal, Baikal Lake, Baikal, Baikal Lake, referred to in the Vedas. The southern Siberia. 9000 BC, before the Ice Age, there was the land connection between Asia and Americas. And people from Siberia, they migrated to America, to southern side. They were kind of shepherds or charwahe, cattle breeders, bhed bakri. So they migrated to different directions. In the south, they moved toward Bactria margiana culture, which later we known as Bactria margiana, 6500 BC. So these people who were living since 9000 BC in the Altai mountain delta around the lake, Baikal Lake, and all these are the references we find in Vedas also. They moved southwards, they moved to Americas, they moved westwards, and they got established in the north of Hindu Kush mountains in the region called Istan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Afghanistan. So, and the other branch settled in the north of Caspian Sea. They crossed the Ural Mountains above the Aral Sea. So there is the Altai Mountains and there is the Ural Mountains. So they crossed Ural Mountains and settled to Caspian Pontic steppes. Then later they developed the culture, pit grave culture, which was known as Yamnaya culture. Indo-Europeans. So I discussed about the Proto-Indo-Europeans in the Altai Mountains, and now they migrated in 6000 BC, 6500 BC to Neolithic, and then they started farming gradually. So from the shepherd, they were the cattle breeders, they started doing farming. So there was some kind of community development because one person alone cannot do farming. Eventually, there was more migration, trade started happening, and they moved further south, became Indo-Iranians, Indo-Indian Aryans, Indo-Aryans from Bactria Mergiana region. There were two streams splitted, one Kopet Dag mountains in the northeast of the Iran. They crossed that mountains ranges, entered Iran. Other stream, they crossed the Hindu Kush mountains, and also there is a Tian Shan region mountains above the Pamir mountains. So Himalaya, above the Himalaya there is the Pamir mountains, and delta of it what we know as Gilgit. So Gilgit region, Islamabad, Peshawar, and Chinese. So that was developed the Silk Road from Kasi in the Xinjiang province of northwest to Gilgit. So this in Afghanistan, Kabul, Kandahar, Peshawar, Islamabad. So these people eventually settled and acquired lands and started doing farming. They required a lot of labor. So indigenous population they hired as a laborer or slave laborer, or without land they were doing farming. Their land was acquired by these guys. So we already discussed all this part of the ancient civilization, how it developed. I wanted to just come to Kyrgyzstan, north of Pamir. As we know, the Indian plate getting collided with the Asian plate, and Himalaya and Pamir, they are rising. Mountains are rising continuously. But there is a limit to how much they will rise. So there is lot of hands. Beta, dadi se baat kar lena jara. So there are a lot of landslides happening in Kyrgyzstan, and the sediments getting settled in the delta. Sorry, I have to cut short, it seems, my discussion. But so stratigraphy of the Kyrgyzstan is very important for study because there are a lot of sedimentation taking place of different rock from the mountains, and then people study the fossils, and then they arrive at the conclusions together with archaeology, and there are a lot of streams joining together to conclude something, and we have reached to the advanced understanding of how these civilizations developed. So my point was, the more we see how civilizations rise and collapse, it is because of the rise of civilization is because of the cooperation, empathy, and organization, better organization, and better trade links. And once it start collapsing, trade and the institutions, and because of lack of empathy, that is the kind where the mental crisis is there in the human psyche, and we show our destructive part rather than more constructive part. So human psyche is built up of these two kind of forces which dominate each other in certain times. The same person who is seen as a very positive, creative, constructive, he may become destructive. And the very destructive person, Gunda like Valmiki, Lutera, can become a saint. So this is human nature. But it happens at the mass scale. When the civilization rise, we have cooperation across the world, globalization in the good sense, trade, and then the more trade happening, then we have pirates, taxation, people who want lutere, pirates, and daku on the Silk Road, on the spice route, and when they take over the negative forces, slowly there is an end of trading, end of there are more migration of people, war, and with the migration and war and all, there is a bad omen. There is a virus, pandemic, epidemic, and then the civilization, when 3, 4 destructive forces join, like a war, anti-trade, subjugation, too much exploitation of resources, climate change, pandemic, then eventually civilization collapses. So I will just cut short here and I will continue later. Thank you so much.